Hit the music! What up, everybody? Stevie Breach coming to you. Today, I was able to watch Hello, My Name is Paul Heyman, the Blu-ray. I watched the documentary. Honestly, thought this was very good. Very few times do I get WWE DVDs with documentaries on them and come on here and not say it is very good. It is very easy for a lot of people to say that this is going to be one of the best ones that WWE's ever done, because it's the last one they've watched. Honestly, it does rank up there. I think that this is a great documentary. I think this goes hand in hand with the Rise and Fall of ECW DVD. I think you watch maybe the Rise and Fall of ECW DVD first, then you watch, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman. My buddy Zach did it right. He got a review up of the ECW DVD, so that's going to be fresh in his mind. If you do have time to watch that before you watch this, I think that honestly, you're going to get a good backstory on ECW. Even if you know what it is, it's going to be fresh in your mind when it gets down to it. You know, Paul Heyman, honestly, when you really think about, who is Paul Heyman and you try to describe who he is as somebody who doesn't know a lot about the wrestling business, ECW more than likely is going to be the first thing that comes to mind. With this DVD, honestly, the one thing that I got was more of his backstory about what was going through. If you listen to a lot of wrestling podcasts, this DVD does go hand in hand with the Chris Jericho interview that was on Talk is Jericho. I believe that interview was about a month ago now. If you listen to that interview, I'm not telling you that you don't need to buy this. What I'm saying is that the things that they go over in this is going to be fresh in your mind. Of course, when most people listen to wrestling podcasts or any other podcasts, they're doing something else while they're doing it. They're, doing some work, they're doing homework, they're cleaning their room, they're doing laundry, they're doing something else. This was good because they tell the same stories, but yet when you watch a DVD documentary, you're sitting in your seat, you're watching the screen, and that's the one thing that you're paying attention to. My kids were doing everything in the room, they were all over me, but it still had my main attention to what I was doing this morning. Paul Heyman's story starts out as a young kid talking about how he hustled his way into the wrestling business. A very smart way. Basically, he read through a free local New York newspaper in the gossip column that before every Garden show, Vincent McMahon, Vince's dad, would go get his hair cut at a local barbershop. And from there, he would go to the show, and then after the show was over, he would go to this local steakhouse, and that's where he would close the place down with him and his buddies, eating steak, talking about the wrestling business, trying to figure out what they could do better. The day after the Garden show, he called in to the Vince's office and told him that he had met Vince at the steakhouse and that he was promised a press pass to the next Madison Square Garden show because he basically said he ran into Vince at the steakhouse. The people who worked for Vince knew that Vince was at the steakhouse. They said he must not be lying. They gave him his press passes, and from there, he was granted, entrance into the Madison Square Garden. He can go anywhere he wanted to backstage. He had, access to the locker room where he was able to interview Bruno Sammartino, Jesse Ventura. The world was his oyster. He could do whatever he needed to back there. From being sort of this person who was taking pictures and getting interviews and things like this, basically that led him into different avenues of wrestling. Basically, he was able to get into a TBS taping for I guess the NWA, WCW as most people would call it. Instead of just, minding his P's and Q's, just trying to, stay out of everybody's way and take the pictures for the magazine and everything like that, he actually just went into a closed-door meeting and sat in the very back row of a meeting that Dusty Rhodes was doing, talking about what they were going to be doing at the production, the production side of things. And Dusty Rhodes sort of came up to Paul after the meeting, and he said, "Well, what are you doing here?" And Paul Heyman says that he's there to cover the show and take pictures to the magazine. But Dusty's like, "No, what are you doing in my production meeting?" And Paul just says, "I'm here to learn from you, And Dusty takes it as he wants to learn from the best. And this is just one of the stories that you get from this documentary, basically, of, the main thing that I got out of Paul Heyman is loyalty. So many times on this DVD, the stars that are influenced by Paul Heyman, you either see they gave Paul Heyman his break early on in his career, or he gave them their break very on in their career. Most people think of, Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar, Paul Heyman and CM Punk. From watching the documentary, I was gonna go through and try and tell you everything that goes on in this documentary. But basically, you need to see it for yourself. My review is just basically that it's good. I'm gonna give you a few sort of stories that comes from it that are fresh on my brain after watching it. But I don't know. You can go to iTunes, and if you just want to watch the documentary, it's only a couple of dollars. If you're that hard up for it, it's going to be online somewhere if you want to see it. But this is something that you need to see. Go out and spend the $20 at Best Buy and pick this up today. I'm sure it's going to be fully stocked on the shelves. It's going to be one of the most things talked about on Twitter and YouTube today. So just go get it yourself. With Paul Heyman and CM Punk, basically, Paul Heyman was in charge of developmental, and there CM Punk was one of his students that he was really, mentoring the most, showing him how to book, showing him how to produce, showing him, the ins and outs of wrestling that Punk didn't learn when he was in, the independents, but when he was coming to WWE. And from the CM Punk DVD, that there were so many times when, Paul was told to, wrap up with CM Punk because they were going to let him go. They were basically telling Paul, you're the bad guy. You have to be the messenger. You have to tell Punk we're going to let him go. And Punk's like, no, that's not my job. I'm going to use him until he's not here anymore. If you guys want to fire him, you guys fire him. But I'm not going to be the guy who's firing him because that's not my job. And basically, because of all of that, there was a spot open for Paul Heyman, to be CM Punk's manager, to be his mouthpiece, to be that guy. And CM Punk talks about, how fun it is that he gets to go to work every day and be with his best friend. Let that sink in for a minute. But basically, they left it in. Then we go to Taz. Was one of the announcers, and he was, within WWE, and he was a big fan of Brock Lesnar, and he knew that when Brock Lesnar was in developmental in Ohio Valley, basically, he was getting the worst advice in the world about what he was supposed to do. Everybody knew Brock was going to be a star. He was too big. He just, had that look when you saw him even when you see him on Ohio Valley tapes that are horribly shot for television, you can tell that this guy is larger than life and he's bigger than everything else that is out there. Basically, Paul Heyman pulled Brock Lesnar aside and gave him personal advice on what they were supposed to be doing. And then he took that and went to Vince McMahon and showed him one of Brock Lesnar's matches, just so Vince would be 100% aware of what he had in developmental at this time. Vince saw this one match and knew that, what are they wasting their time with? Basically, we need to get Brock on TV as soon as possible. And he asked Heyman, what is your relationship with Brock Lesnar? And he had this one conversation with Brock, and it went over well. They weren't friends, but they were friendly. And, Paul just basically said, that it was good. And from there, we got to see, Brock Lesnar debuting on Monday Night Raw the night after WrestleMania. Paul Heyman being the mouthpiece for Brock Lesnar, which led to him going on his big, long run to SummerSlam 2002, winning the title. From there, they go to basically Brock leaving WWE. He goes out, he wins the UFC championship a few times. He has to retire from the UFC. When he comes back, he tries it on his own to be his own mouthpiece, and in one interview he knows this isn't going to work. He goes back in the back and he tells Vince at the gorilla position. I think when you listen to the Jericho interview, Heyman says he actually takes the microphone, puts the microphone in Vince's hand in the back, and tells him, get me Paul Heyman. And from there, basically, Paul has all of the stories that it goes along with this, but the breakup from WWE, the breakup with Vince McMahon was horrible. I'm sure everyone has read the stories. If not, go back in the Observer catalog, read the stories, listen to the interviews where Paul Heyman basically is fired from the December to Dismember pay-per-view. Basically, Paul Heyman has one thought of what ECW is supposed to be because he lived it in the past, and Vince McMahon knows that, basically he says that it wasn't what he was supposed to be, and they were fighting tooth and nail about what everything is supposed to be. Stephanie McMahon probably said it best. Paul Heyman isn't that good at not being the boss, and with the letters ECW, he wore it like this is what it's supposed to be, and it's not that. To go in to the WWE ECW stuff, it took a bit of time covering this for what it was. I was a fan. I loved watching it. I thought it was like basically an independent independent wrestling company getting their own television show. And Tommy Dreamer, he talks about how he thinks of the WWE ECW a lot like it's a divorce, where basically there's a dad and his son, and because of this divorce, basically he doesn't get to live with his son anymore. The son lives with the mom and the stepdad. Basically, Vince McMahon is the stepdad, and he's raising ECW. Paul Heyman is saying, this is not what ECW was. It's mine. I want it to be like this. And Vince McMahon has to say, he says, well, he is your son, but your son lives with me now. And he's going to have to live under these rules because this is the way it's going to be. And I thought that was great. Joey Styles talks about basically there was a precedent set for ECW basically because Vince wanted to relaunch a third brand. There was a lot of people out there that wanted ECW to come back. People were clamoring for it and really wanted to have it. Basically, WWE put feelers out there. They said, we're going to start a third brand. Advertisers and a television company, being Sci-Fi, bought ECW thinking it was going to be ECW. Basically, pay-per-view companies bought the pay-per-view December to Dismember to put it on TV thinking it was going to be ECW, and it wasn't ECW. It was just a third brand, a developmental branch of WWE, and if it wasn't ECW, if it was Lifestyles of WWE as a wrestling name, it would have been a good show. It would have been a good company, but it wasn't ECW, which made it look like a huge failure. I got 3 minutes before I have to cut this off. So basically, there's lots of good stories out there. One of my best was talking about how he scammed his way into. Of course, you get to see him going in and out of different companies. He had a lot of things. A lot of bad breaks in his career, I guess you can say. Basically, once he wants to become a manager, he basically got his name Paulie Dangerously from his looking like Michael Keaton. He stole the name from Johnny Dangerously, a Michael Keaton movie from the 80s, and that's how he got his name. Basically, he went from an independent company to starting to work in Florida. Florida was bought out by the Crockett's, which means he left there to go to Memphis. From being in Memphis, he went to the AWA. AWA was probably the one place that really got his name out there the most. With the AWA, they were on ESPN every day for an hour at 3 o'clock. And what I didn't know was when you watch the AWA television, they showed the same matches in different order each day. Basically, each week of television had the same matches, but yet every show had different interviews that were put in. Paul Heyman would just shoot interview after interview after interview, getting those interview skills up, and basically that's where he got the best out of himself. Definitely go pick this up. Like I said earlier, it's only a few bucks on iTunes if you want just the documentary to rent. I'm sure I'll have it up on YouTube to rent sooner than later. $20 at Best Buy. You're going to get your money's worth out of it. I would say probably over 50 separate promos from all over his career was what most people will remember him for. Plus, I like the fact that they used the clip from Beyond the Mat. So, can't go wrong. Peace out, everybody.